These aren't movie villains. They're real people, real killers, and the things they did are worse than anything you've seen in a horror film. Let's start with the one who buried murder kits years in advance. Story 1. Israel Keyes, the serial killer who hunted by plane. Most serial killers have patterns. They target a certain kind of victim. They live in the same state. They follow a method. But not Israel Keyes. He didn't care who you were. He didn't care where you lived. He didn't even care how long it took. Because he was playing the completely different game. One the FBI would later describe as pure evil, perfected. Let me take you back to what seemed like just another day. A young barista in Anchorage, Alaska, named Samantha Koenig, was working the evening shift. She was 18, she was bright, and she was just trying to make it through another quiet night at the coffee stand. At 8 p.m., a man walked up to the window. She smiled politely, took his order, and turned to make the coffee. What she didn't see was that the man had already drawn a gun. When she turned back, he told her to shut off the lights, to get on the ground, and when she hesitated, he climbed through the window. The cameras caught everything, but no one watching can stop what happened next. He forced her out of the stand and into his truck. She tried to run. He tackled her, dragged her into the back, and drove off into the dark. By the time her boyfriend came to pick her up, she was already gone, and Israel Keyes had vanished into the snow. Here's what no one knew at the time. This wasn't some random act. It wasn't spur of the moment. Keyes had been planning this for years, not just this murder, but all of them. You see, Israel Keyes was a builder, but not of homes or furniture. He built kill kits. He would travel across the country, places he had no connection to, and bury hidden caches. Inside them, rope, guns, tape, shovels, Drano, zip ties, ammunition, gloves, disguises, everything you'd need to kidnap, torture, and disappear someone forever. He'd then fly back home and wait, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, until one day, when the craving came back, he'd hop on a plane, pick a victim at random, dig up the kit, and kill. No one had done anything like this before. There were no patterns, no motive, no connection, just shadows. Back in Alaska, Samantha's family was begging for her return. Posters were up everywhere. The police were working the case 24/7, but there were no leads. Until one day, her boyfriend received a text from Samantha's phone. It said she was alive, and it gave instructions. Go to a local park, check under the memorial poster. He did. What he found was a photo. It showed Samantha, her eyes open, her hair neatly braided, a copy of the newspaper next to her, proving the date. Attached was a note demanding $30,000. Her family thought she might still be alive. But here's the truth. Samantha had already been dead for weeks. When Israel Keyes kidnapped her, he brought her back to his home, tied her up in his shed, raped her, then strangled her to death. After that, he went on a cruise with his family, a vacation, just days after taking her life. When he came back, he dug up her body, defrosted it, braided her hair, applied makeup, staged the photo, and wired her limbs with fishing line so she'd appear lifelike in the image. That's the level of control he needed. Even in death, she was just another piece in his performance. The ransom was paid. Keyes withdrew the money in pieces. $500 here, $600 there, across different states. That's what finally led to his arrest. Police noticed one ATM withdrawal in Arizona, far from Alaska. A white rental car had been seen nearby, and inside that car was Israel Keyes. They pulled him over, and in the vehicle, they found Samantha's phone and her debit card. The game was over, or so they thought. Now in custody, Keyes didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't even resist. He just talked, and what he revealed was worse than anything they could have imagined. He told them that Samantha was just the latest. There were others. He'd murdered a couple in Vermont, Bill and Lorraine Currier, who had no enemies and no reason to be targeted. He broke into their house in the middle of the night, tied them up, dragged them to an abandoned farmhouse, killed Bill first, then raped and murdered Lorraine. He disposed of their bodies so well, they were never found. The kicker, he had buried the kill kit for that exact crime 2 years earlier. 2 years. He said it was just a matter of time. Keyes confessed to at least 11 murders. But the FBI believes the number is much higher, because he burned all the evidence, destroyed his hard drives, and only gave partial confessions. He didn't want fame. He didn't want a Netflix documentary. He just wanted control. Even in prison, he played games, drawing pictures of skulls, writing cryptic notes, refusing to give full names of his victims. He left hints and then took them back. And then, one morning in 2012, Israel Keyes was found in his jail cell, dead. He had slit his wrists and strangled himself with bedsheets. A final act of control. He left behind 12 pages of drawings, skulls, demons, and one final message: we are one. Story 2. Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield. They thought he was harmless, just a quiet man in a small Wisconsin town. A little strange, sure, but no one really paid attention. He lived alone, didn't bother anyone, kept to himself after his mother died. He was just Ed Gein, but behind his front door was the most disturbing house of horrors the country had ever seen. And the true story that would go on to inspire Psycho, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the Silence of the Lambs. Because what Ed Gein was hiding wasn't just a few skeletons in the closet. It was skin on the walls, bones in the kitchen, and something far more twisted than murder. It started with a missing woman. Bernice Warden was a hardware store owner in the quiet town of Plainfield, Wisconsin. She went missing on November 16th, 1957. The last receipt she wrote was for antifreeze, sold to Ed Gein. Police paid him a visit. At first, he wasn't home, so they stepped inside. They never forgot what they saw. The first thing they noticed was the smell. Rot, decay, something unnatural. The second thing was what was hanging upside down in the shed. It was a body, headless, gutted, stripped like a deer. It was Bernice. But that was only the beginning. Inside the house they found a wastebasket made of human skin, chairs upholstered with human flesh, a belt sewn from nipple patches, bowls made from human skulls, a lampshade made from a woman's face, masks, actual skinned faces, stretched and dried like leather, a box full of preserved noses, and on the stove, a human heart in a pot. That wasn't a house, it was a crypt, a laboratory of madness, and a museum of the dead. When they found Ed, he didn't run, he didn't cry, he didn't even blink. He confessed with a blank face, like he was explaining how to make toast. Here's the part no one was prepared for. Ed didn't just kill, he collected. After his mother died, something inside him snapped. He was obsessed with her. Agnes Gein was strict, religious, and controlling. She taught Ed that women were evil, that sex was sin, that the world was wicked and must be punished. She was his only friend, his only guide. When she passed, he lost the only voice that told him what was right. So he started listening to the other voices. Ed became fascinated with death, with the female form, with anatomy and transformation. But he wasn't killing often. No, his real work came from grave robbing. He would read the obituaries. Wait until a recently buried woman was laid to rest. Then dig her up under cover of night and bring her home. Some bodies he kept whole. Others he peeled apart like dolls. He used their skin to make lamps, their bones for decorations. But most disturbing of all, he was building a suit, a woman's suit, made of real flesh, so he could become his mother, climb inside her skin, and walk around the house pretending she was still alive. That's not a theory. That's what he admitted. He would put on the breastplate he made, the full body skin, a mask of someone else's face, and he would walk around in it at night. In his mind, he wasn't Ed anymore. He was her, his mother, alive again, but in his body. And somehow, that made everything okay. Police asked how many people he killed. He admitted to 2, but the body parts they found, they came from at least 15 different women, all dug up, used, dissected, and then stitched into everyday objects. Can you imagine? Sitting in a chair made of someone's thighs, turning on a lamp shaded by a real face, eating off plates next to skulls, and Ed thought it was all normal. He kept his mother's room exactly as she left it, spotless, untouched, like a shrine. The rest of the house looked like a battlefield. Rotting food, jars of organs, strips of flesh drying on coat hangers. But her room, clean. That was sacred ground. Because in Ed's mind, everything he did was to honor her. They found books on anatomy, Nazi medical experiments, cannibalism, black magic. He had been studying this for years. In court, they ruled him insane. He was sent to a mental institution, where he remained until he died of cancer in 1984. He never expressed guilt, never asked for forgiveness, never explained the full story. But the evidence spoke for itself. What makes Ed Gein different from other serial killers wasn't how many people he murdered. It was what he did with the dead. There was no pleasure in the kill, only obsession in the aftermath. He didn't want to end lives. He wanted to reconstruct them, to craft, to create, to bring something back that never should have returned. Years later, when writers and filmmakers heard the story, they didn't believe it was real. Because how could it be a real man wearing other people's faces, making furniture out of flesh, sleeping next to human remains like they were stuffed animals? But it was real. Every nightmare you've seen in movies, the mask in Texas Chainsaw, the skin suit in Silence of the Lambs, the mother fixation in Psycho, all of it came from one man, a quiet farmer in a small town that no one ever suspected. Until one cold November day, when someone just didn't come home. The thing about Ed Gein is that he didn't want to be a monster. He wanted to be his mother's good boy, to keep her close, to be her. But in trying to do that, he became something much worse. A human taxidermist, a reverse mortician, a man who loved too much in the most twisted way imaginable. So next time you hear something in the dark, a footstep, a creak, a whisper, just hope it's not someone like Ed. Because if it is, they won't just take your life. They'll take your skin, your shape, your name, and you'll never be you again. Story 3. Khalil Wheeler Weaver, the monster behind the profile. You probably think you're good at spotting red flags, bad vibes, creepy messages. We all like to think we'd know if something felt off. But what if the red flags were hidden behind a clean face, a calm voice, and a police badge? This story isn't about an old farmhouse or a distant killer. The story is now, online, and it could have happened to anyone with a phone. Because Khalil Wheeler Weaver was using the same apps we all do, Tinder, Tagged, Plenty of Fish, but he wasn't looking for love. He was hunting, and he almost got away with everything. It started in 2016, northern New Jersey. A girl named Robin West went missing. She was 19, bright, funny. She'd struggled with things, sure, but she was still trying, still fighting to get her life back. And then, she was gone. Her family filed a missing persons report. Days later, a fire was reported in an abandoned house. By the time firefighters arrived, it was completely engulfed. Inside, they found a body, burned beyond recognition. It was Robin. She'd been strangled, set on fire, and left in an abandoned building like she didn't matter. There were no suspects, no evidence, but Khalil was already planning his next move. He didn't look like a killer. He was clean-cut, soft-spoken, wore button-ups. And here's the real kicker. He was training to be a cop. He came from a respected family. His uncle was a detective. He lived in a quiet neighborhood. No one suspected him, and that's exactly what made him dangerous. Next came Joanne Brown, a 33-year-old woman he met online. He messaged her, flirted a little, offered a ride. She accepted. She was never seen alive again. Her body was later discovered on the side of a road, bound with duct tape, face down, with a plastic bag still over her head, strangled, just like Robin. But again, there were no witnesses, no camera footage, just a ghost moving through dating apps and deleting his tracks. Then came Tiffany Taylor. She was 34, and she almost became another body. But this time, the monster got sloppy. Tiffany had been through a lot in her life. She was tough, street smart, not easy to fool. But one night, she met Khalil through a dating app. He introduced himself under a fake name, said he was a businessman. She agreed to meet him, but instantly, something felt off. The car ride was too quiet. He kept looking at her like he wasn't seeing a person, but a plan. They stopped at a motel. That's when he snapped. He punched her, tried to tie her up, threatened her life. But Tiffany fought back. Kicked, screamed, bit him. He panicked, tried to drag her, but she got out, ran. She survived, and that would be his biggest mistake. Tiffany didn't stay quiet. She went to the police, gave them everything. His fake name, phone number, car description. But here's where it gets sick. The police didn't believe her. Why? Because of her past. They thought she was unreliable, not a perfect victim, so they brushed it off. Meanwhile, Khalil kept hunting. His final known victim was Sarah Butler. She was 20 years old, college student, theater kid, loved by friends and family. She met Khalil on Tagged. They chatted. He said he was new in town and lonely. She agreed to meet him, and then she vanished. Her friends immediately knew something was wrong. She wasn't the type to disappear. But the cops were slow, so her friends, mostly young black women, took matters into their own hands. One of them had an idea. She created a fake profile, used the same app Sarah had, and baited Khalil. It worked. He took the bait, started messaging, flirting, trying to set up a meetup. Meanwhile, they traced the account, tracked the phone, pulled surveillance footage, and there he was, Khalil Wheeler Weaver, smiling, calm, thinking he was untouchable. But this time, he got caught. Police arrested him and searched his phone. What they found made everyone stop breathing. His phone had a search history of nightmares. How to make homemade poison. What chemicals knock people out instantly. How to delete phone location permanently. Do missing persons reports expire? But the worst part? He kept a list. A literal tell list. With locations, timestamps, plans. He even tracked the exact spots where he dumped the bodies. Using Google Maps, he thought he was being smart, organized, careful, but that ego, the belief that no one would ever stop him, was the very thing that got him caught. In court, he showed no emotion, no apology, no tears. He just sat there, like a machine. But the victims' families? They stood up, they told the world who these women really were. Not just troubled, not just missing, but real. Mothers, daughters, sisters, each one mattered. And then Tiffany Taylor walked in, the one who got away. She stood there, looked him in the eyes, and said, "You're not a serial killer. You're a coward." Khalil was sentenced to 160 years in prison. No chance of parole. No second chances. just concrete walls and silence. Here's what makes this story so terrifying. He didn't look dangerous. He wasn't from the shadows. He was using apps you probably had on your phone right now. He targeted women he thought no one would care about. He thought no one would look for them. He thought their stories wouldn't matter. But he was wrong. They mattered. They still matter. And one of them fought back. So the next time someone messages you online and something feels a little off, even if they seem nice, even if they say the right things, even if they have a badge or a smile, trust your gut, because the scariest monsters aren't hiding in old basements or haunted houses. They're in your inbox, in your DMs, smiling behind a profile picture, just waiting for someone to swipe right. Story 4. Robert Bedella, the collector of pain. Some serial killers hide their darkness. They wear a mask, a smile, and pretend to be normal. Not Robert Berdella. He didn't want to look normal. He was the monster. And he didn't just kill. He collected. He studied. He documented every scream, every broken bone, every moment of pain, like an artist perfecting his masterpiece. And no one knew, because on the outside, he was just a quiet guy who ran a small shop in Kansas City. A local business owner, polite, private, forgettable. But inside his house, he was building a chamber, a personal hell, where he turned men into objects and pain into routine. It started in the late 1980s. People around the city began to notice something strange. Young men, often drifters or sex workers, were disappearing. No trace, no body, just gone. But back then, no one looked too hard. The victims weren't high profile. They were easy to ignore. And that's exactly what Berdella counted on. Because while the city was sleeping, he was chaining men in his basement, injecting them with animal tranquilizers, breaking them, not just physically, but mentally. Robert Berdella kept a journal, not a diary, a ledger, a minute-by-minute log of his victims' suffering. Every scream, every wound, every failed attempt to escape. He called his victims subjects. He didn't use their names. He stripped them of identity, and then stripped them of everything else. And when he was done with them, he didn't bury the bodies. He dismembered them, boiled the flesh, fed some to dogs, and put the rest out with the trash. Yes, the trash, picked up by the city like it was just garbage. That's how confident he was, that no one would catch him. Here's how he got them. He'd lure young men with offers of shelter, food, or money. Many were vulnerable, struggling, homeless, or trusting. He'd gain their trust, then slip them sedatives, and once they were out cold, he'd take them to the basement. That's where the experiments began. He used ropes, chains, electrical wires, chemicals, hypodermic needles. One victim was shocked repeatedly with 7,700 volts. Another had drain cleaner injected into his vocal cords just to silence the screams. Some were kept alive for days, others for weeks. But the worst part, he photographed everything. Every wound, every restraint, every moment of their agony. He cataloged it, organized it, studied it. It was like a personal horror museum, and he was the curator. He didn't kill out of rage. He killed out of curiosity. He once told investigators, "I wanted to see how far I could go before someone died." That's all it was to him. An experiment. Like testing the limits of a lab rat. Only these were people. The first victim, Jerry Howell, was just 19. He thought Berdella was offering him a ride to a dance contest. Instead, Berdella drugged him, tied him down, and raped him repeatedly. Jerry screamed, begged, cried for his parents. Berdella recorded the whole thing in his journal. 2 days later, Jerry died from the trauma. Berdella disposed of the body like a butcher discards bones, kept only a few trophies. His second victim, Robert Sheldon, was different. Berdella didn't see him as a threat. He was quiet, obedient, so Berdella got experimental. He inserted drain cleaner into his eyes, tried swabbing chemicals into his ears, stapled his eyelids, and left him tied up for 3 days, completely conscious. He wanted to see what the human body could withstand, how much pain someone could take before the mind broke. And when Robert finally died, Berdella cleaned up, logged the results, and moved on to the next. Each victim was given a code name in Berdella's notes. He reduced them to numbers, wrote things like, Subject 3, Day 2, refuses food, applied bleach to open sores. Subject 5, unresponsive, injected hypodermic solution to stimulate pain receptors. This wasn't madness, it was methodical. He treated torture like homework, and the world never knew. Because on the surface, Berdella was just the weird guy who sold odd antiques and skull replicas. He donated to local charities, went to art shows, kept his yard neat. He even called the police once on someone else, because he knew the best place to hide is in plain sight. So how did he finally get caught? It wasn't an investigation. It wasn't forensics. It was one man who escaped. April 1988. A young man named Chris Bryson was lured into Berdella's house. The same routine. Drugged, chained, tortured. But Chris wasn't like the others. He was patient, smart, and desperate to survive. After being kept for days, beaten, violated, nearly broken, he waited for the right moment. When Berdella went upstairs, Chris managed to burn through the ropes using a match Berdella accidentally left behind. He broke a window, leapt out, naked, bleeding, with a dog collar still around his neck. He ran to the nearest house, begged for help, and told the police everything. When they entered Berdella's house, even the most hardened officers couldn't believe what they saw. Bloodstains, Polaroids, chains on the walls, a stained mattress, a TV set in front of the torture area, where Berdella would watch cartoons while his victims screamed, and boxes full of journals, photographs, human remains. There was no doubt they had found a serial killer. But worse than that, they had found a sadist with a system. He was charged with multiple murders, faced the death penalty. But Berdella took a deal. He confessed to everything to avoid execution. He detailed each kill, each torture, each body part. The interviews lasted for hours, and he showed zero remorse. Just smirks, shrugs, and sentences like, he was already broken. I didn't see the point in keeping him. Robert Berdella died in 1992 from a heart attack in prison. No ceremony, no final words, just a quiet ending to a lifetime of screams. To this day, there are still photos and evidence that have never been released to the public. Too graphic, too horrifying, too real. And even now, investigators wonder if the journals were complete. If maybe, just maybe, there were more victims, ones who were never reported missing. Because if you were young, struggling and alone in Kansas City during the 80s, there was a chance you were on the list. So what makes Berdella the worst of them all? Not just that he killed, but how he killed. The obsession, the documentation, the slow, deliberate unraveling of a human being turned into an object, a note in a journal, a picture in a box. This wasn't murder. It was erasure of identity, of dignity, of life. So next time someone seems too friendly, too helpful, too normal, ask yourself, what are they hiding? Because monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they're collectors, and you're just another entry waiting to be written down.
Some monsters don't hide.